This horror tale is about a womanizing man. After his wife passed away, he was left to raise 3 young children and care for his elderly mother, all living under the same roof. That morning, as he prepared to leave for work, his mother and children walked him to the gate, reminding him to return home early. He made a living through manual labor, sometimes working odd jobs, other times collecting debts, to support his mother and children. Hearing his mother's reminder, he snapped, saying he'd be back right after finishing his tasks. The elderly mother knew her son well. She was aware of his promiscuity and lack of integrity. She warned him multiple times to stay away from bars and places where flirtatious women often gathered. But with his careless nature, her words were like the wind, passing through one ear and out the other. He merely waved her off, nodded half-heartedly, and walked away, leaving her standing silently with the children, worry in her eyes. Indeed, no one understands a child better than their mother. She had sensed something ominous approaching, but could do nothing more than hope her words still held some weight with him. Upon reaching the city, he started his debt collection as usual. His footsteps led him past various shops and businesses. Once his pockets were full, he immediately slipped away into a place filled with dazzling lights. He entered the brothel with a familiar eagerness. Lust was ingrained in his very being. He no longer knew what shame was. To him, a night of ecstasy was worth more than family, conscience, or morals. It was this very lifestyle that had driven his late wife to her grave. She couldn't endure the betrayal and his habitual infidelity. After a night of pleasure, he woke at dawn and began his journey home, crossing through a forest. There, he suddenly saw a woman walking slowly along the forest's edge. Her slender figure glided like silk in the wind, causing him to stop in his tracks. Her swaying waist held a strange allure that captured his gaze completely. In that moment, his desire surged violently. Unable to resist, he quickly approached her, speaking in a flirtatious tone, asking where she was headed, his lustful eyes betraying his true intentions. He flirted shamelessly, saying that the mountain paths were dangerous, filled with tigers and wolves, and suggested they travel together for safety. His words were brazen, showing no respect. Not stopping there, he even invited her into the forest to rest for a while, already planning to take advantage of her. The woman rejected his offer. She said that although she was widowed, she remained virtuous and could not sully herself with such filth in broad daylight with a stranger. Upon hearing she was a widow, a new idea formed in his head. He confided that he too had lost his wife long ago and suggested this might be fate. He pretended to be sincere and asked if she'd be willing to marry him. Hearing about marriage, the woman began to inquire about his family. She gently asked who else lived in his house, but her eyes revealed quiet calculation. Seeing her softening, he eagerly explained. At home, he had an elderly mother over 70 and 3 young children who needed a woman to manage the household. The woman frowned slightly but wasn't deterred by the children. She said she loved kids but was worried about living with his mother, fearing conflict, as mothers-in-law were often difficult. To ease her concerns, he quickly reassured her. He said he'd send his mother to live with his sister so that it wouldn't affect their future married life. A few days later, he arranged everything. He packed his mother's belongings himself and took her to his sister's house. The old woman didn't understand what was happening. She simply left quietly. The woman even asked her brother to help. The man came with a horse carriage, assisting and escorting the elderly mother, appearing as if doing a noble deed, which made him feel reassured. Not long after, she moved into his house permanently. Her presence brightened the previously gloomy home, and he felt as if his life had entered a new chapter. She met the 3 children smiling sweetly and telling them to call her Mother. Her gentle voice brooked no refusal, leaving the children stunned and silent. Though obedient, the 3 children trembled. From her eyes to her movements, something about her struck deep fear in them. Their lips quivered as they hesitantly called her mother, unable to hide their confusion. The woman seemed pleased. She stroked their hair, praised them for being obedient, her face glowing as if she had achieved something significant. No one knew what lay behind that smile. The lustful man was finally satisfied. That night, he embraced the woman in his arms, reveling in the pleasures of the flesh. Since moving in, she had taken over all household chores, cooking, cleaning, everything she did with skill. From the day she arrived, he no longer left the house. He spent all day by her side, indulging in affection. When she asked why he didn't go collect debts anymore, he said he couldn't bear to leave her alone. She smiled gently and urged him to continue working. She said she would take good care of the children and that he shouldn't let a woman distract him from life's responsibilities. That morning, as he was about to leave, the 3 children suddenly burst into tears. They clung to his sleeves, begging him not to go. Their tears seemed to convey something urgent, but he didn't understand. Ignoring their pleas, he walked away. A flicker of unease crossed his heart, but quickly faded with the woman's encouragement. He left the house without looking back, believing everything would be fine. By afternoon, he returned home. Reaching the gate, he shouted his arrival, but the door was shut tight and there was no response from inside. A creeping unease took hold as he stood frozen in the quiet yard. He called out several more times, but the house remained deathly silent. Suspicion rising, he slowly approached the door, cautiously pushing it open. At that moment, a giant wolf suddenly burst from the house. It roared ferociously. Before he could react, it flashed past him like a whirlwind. The wolf raced across the yard and vanished into the distant forest like a ghost. He only caught a glimpse of its tail disappearing. His entire body froze, heart pounding wildly. He screamed for his children and rushed inside. The floor was icy beneath his feet, the doors wide open, and no trace of life remained. The house reeked of blood and silence. Blood covered the floor, smeared in patterns like a crazed beast's footprints. The air was thick with the stench of death. His 3 children had been killed. Torn clothing soaked in fresh blood lay on the ground. The children had been torn apart by the beast, only their heads remained. He rushed to his sister's house to find his mother, only to discover she had never arrived. Because of his lust and desire, he had brought a monster into his home, feeding his children and mother to the wolf. He had let his desire cloud his mind, trading his entire family for a mysterious woman. He eventually went mad, starving, wandering, endlessly searching for the she-wolf. In the end, he died frozen and hungry by the roadside. This horror story is about a scholar. It is said that he was an experienced man who always emphasized the importance of doing good deeds. In the underworld, King Yama keeps a ledger, and after death, all souls are judged accordingly. People often brought their misbehaving relatives or friends to him so he could teach them a lesson using the story of his own past. One day, someone brought his unruly son to ask for guidance. The scholar gently recounted the events of his past 3 lifetimes. In the first life, he was a wealthy and renowned man in his region, known far and wide for his kindness and generosity. He treated everyone with great warmth and kindness. When encountering those who faced hardship or disaster, he would try to help without hesitation. The poor came to seek his help, and all admired his noble heart. Those who knew him praised his compassion, saying he had a heart like a bodhisattva. One time a servant came to report something, that an old farmer was kneeling in the yard, unable to repay a loan and intending to give his daughter as collateral. The story was that the old farmer's wife had suddenly died. Being destitute and needing money for the funeral, he had borrowed money from the wealthy man. Now he couldn't repay it. Glancing at the young girl, the wealthy man sipped hot tea and gently said he would take the girl in as a servant and erase the debt. Over more than 60 years of life, he performed countless good deeds. At the age of 62, he passed away peacefully. After his death, he arrived in the underworld. While waiting in line to pass through the demon gate, he was suddenly called back. Because he had been kind-hearted, King Yama personally offered him a grand feast and respectfully invited him to sit and enjoy the banquet. During the feast, King Yama ordered a little demon to pour him wine. He didn't drink right away, but stared intently at his cup. The murky wine seemed bottomless. He thought to himself, "This must be the soup of forgetfulness." Drinking it would erase all memories of past lives before reincarnation. He discreetly glanced at King Yama's cup, which was crystal clear, and he could see the bottom. King Yama told him that anyone who did good on earth would be treated with respect here. Then he invited him to drink the wine in front of him. To show warmth, King Yama lifted his own cup and drank it all. However, while King Yama tilted his head back to drink, the man secretly poured his wine away. After the feast ended, King Yama opened the ledger to review his life and grew furious. It turned out he had only pretended to be kind. After giving money to a beggar, he returned to his house with a servant. As soon as they entered, he ordered the servant to release the dogs and let them kill the filthy beggar. In front of others, he appeared charitable, but behind the scenes he committed vile acts like releasing dogs to attack the poor. The servant obeyed, and the poor man was killed by the sharp teeth of the dogs. He was also a lecherous and immoral man. In front of the old farmer, he pretended to take the daughter in as a servant, but it was part of his scheme. He secretly whispered to the steward to bring the girl to his room. That night, he raped the girl. Every single one of these evil deeds was recorded in King Yama's ledger. After being raped, the girl hanged herself. He then ordered his men to wrap her in a mat and toss her in a desolate graveyard to be eaten by wild dogs. He thought he could deceive the world, but he didn't expect that after death, all his sins would be punished. Enraged, King Yama sentenced him to be reincarnated as an animal. A little demon wrapped a thick iron chain around his neck and dragged him away. He trudged along reluctantly. When they reached a house with a very high threshold, the demon ordered him to climb over it, but he couldn't. The little demon whipped him hard, causing his body to spring up. That way, he fell over the threshold, marking the beginning of his second life. "Oh, it's a stallion," someone said. He looked up. Two cart drivers were looking at him and laughing. They chatted happily, pleased to have a new horse to work with. Looking down at himself, he had become a newborn foal, his body still wet with amniotic fluid. Instinctively, he nuzzled under his mother horse's belly to suckle. After 2 or 3 years, he grew into an adult horse. Every time he resisted, he was whipped. The worst pain was being ridden without a saddle. The cart driver clamped his legs against his belly and kicked his ribs, sending pain deep into his bones. Unable to endure the suffering any longer, he refused to eat and starved himself to death. After death, he once again stood before King Yama. Since his punishment was not over, King Yama ordered him to be reincarnated as a dog. He truly didn't want to be an animal again, but was mercilessly beaten by demons. He ran away, only to reach a cliff with no escape. The demons were close behind. Terrified of the beatings and wishing to end it all, he jumped off the cliff, thinking he would finally be free. But when he woke up, he found himself lying in a mother dog's arms, suckling alongside several puppies. As he grew older, he saw feces and garbage, and not only was he not disgusted, he even thought it tasted good. After some time living as a dog, he truly no longer wanted to be a mindless animal, so he attacked his owner by biting him. The owner thought the dog had gone mad and beat him to death with a stick. Taking one's own life only leads to harsher punishments in the underworld. So, once again, King Yama ordered him to reincarnate. When he opened his eyes, he found himself trapped in a dark cave. Seeing a bit of light, he crawled toward it. This time, he discovered that he had been reincarnated as a snake. He vowed never to harm another life again. When hungry, he would eat wild fruits and even began meditating to cultivate wisdom. One day, he saw a horse carriage passing by and slithered out in front of it. He was crushed under the wheels, his body torn in two. Upon returning to the underworld, King Yama saw that he had endured 3 lifetimes of reincarnation and had finally awakened. Thus, he allowed him to be reborn as a human, and he became the scholar he is today. Since becoming human, he has developed a peculiar habit. Whenever he sees someone riding a horse without a saddle, he stops them. That's because he still remembers the pain of being ridden without a saddle, numbness in his hips. The memories of his 3 lifetimes of reincarnation granted him a heart full of compassion, and that has become the strongest testimony to awaken others and to constantly remind himself. This strange story took place in the spring when the town was buzzing with life. Everywhere was filled with the joyful atmosphere of the flower festival and fireworks. The streets were lively and bustling with vendors and buyers. People from all over came to admire the flowers and enjoy the scenery. However, amidst the joyful and vibrant setting, the walls were plastered with missing person posters. These missing person posters were densely packed, most of them showing images of young women and children. Inside the tavern, people were chatting. Many theories were raised. Some believed the victims had been kidnapped, while others guessed they had been lured into dark organizations. Especially for the young women and children, there were even more rumors, one of which claimed they had been kidnapped by a sinister group. However, no one knew how this organization operated or what they did with the people they captured. It was all speculation. According to some accounts, there were demons who used delicious food, money, or jewelry to lure people in. Those who were gullible or easily tempted would be drawn in. Once they accepted or consumed those offerings, they would immediately lose their senses, becoming defenseless prey. There were even rumors of a kind of dark magic called beast crafting, which demons could use to turn humans into animals. Everyone was shocked and questioned whether such black magic could really exist, as these were all just rumors. No one had ever witnessed it firsthand. While people were still gossiping, a strange man appeared outside and entered the marketplace. This man acted rather mysteriously. He wore a hat that covered half his face and led several mules and horses. When he arrived at an inn, the staff quickly approached him, cheerfully asking whether he wanted to rest for a bit or stay overnight. The man said he wished to stay overnight, but first he would leave the mules and horses here to go pick up some goods, then return. The staff eagerly took the reins and assured the guests that he could trust them to look after the animals while he went on his errand. As the guest was about to leave, he turned back and repeatedly reminded the staff to let the animals rest and eat, but absolutely not to give them water. After saying that, the guest turned and walked away, leaving the staff member puzzled and confused. The innkeeper's assistant whispered to the horses, complaining that their master was stingy for not letting them drink water in such hot weather. He worried they'd fall sick and he'd be blamed for it. By noon, the sun blazed down. The mules began to grow restless, making the innkeeper's assistant uneasy. He tried all sorts of ways but couldn't calm the mules. They kept whining and stomping non-stop. With no other option, he ignored the guests' instructions and fetched a few buckets of water to pour into the trough. The mules drank greedily. Afterward, everything quieted down. There were no more noises. The assistant felt relieved, exhaled deeply, and turned to walk away. Suddenly, something unexpected happened behind him. A thick mist of dust and smoke appeared, and within it the mules began to change in a strange way. The very same mules now transformed into young women. They were the people shown on the missing posters. The assistant had never witnessed such a sight. He was so terrified his legs gave out, and he collapsed to the ground. He thought they must be demons. In his sheer panic, he scrambled and rolled to find the innkeeper. The innkeeper was an experienced man and did not panic. He quickly invited the women inside. The women explained they had been transformed into mules and horses by dark magic used by a demon. They said that if the assistant hadn't accidentally given them water, breaking the spell, they didn't know where they would have been taken. After hearing their story, the innkeeper realized the demon would likely return. He told the assistant to report it to the local authorities. Upon receiving the report, a team of officers hid around the inn, waiting for the demon to return. Not long after, the demon came back, bringing along a few goats. Seeing the mules gone, he angrily questioned the assistant. The assistant said the mules had been taken to the backyard, then invited the demon inside for tea and promised to show him later. As soon as the demon stepped inside, the ambushing officers leapt out and overwhelmed him before he could react. The demon was captured alive on the spot, unable to escape. All he could do was kneel down and let them bind him. After bringing him to the main hall, the magistrate ordered water to be given to the goats. After drinking, the same eerie white mist appeared and the goats instantly turned back into children. The officers immediately interrogated the demon, demanding he reveal how he performed the dark magic that transformed humans into animals. On the magistrate's orders, the soldiers began flogging the demon. They landed repeatedly on his body. Despite the brutal punishment, the demon refused to confess. In the end, unable to endure any longer, he was beaten to death. As for the method of performing that dark magic, since no one could extract the secret in time, it remains forever unknown. This horror story is about a man who came from a farming background. He was over 40 years old, and after his wife passed away, he had no money to remarry, so he lived alone. That day, while he was weeding in the field, something caught his attention. In the distance, he vaguely saw the silhouette of a girl in a red dress walking along the edge of the field. He glanced around. Within the visible radius, there was no one else in sight, so a wicked idea formed in his mind. He quickly stepped in front of the girl in red, blocking her path. With a suggestive tone, he asked where she was going. He started acting up, pointing at the field she had just walked across, claiming she had damaged his crops and demanding compensation. The girl, flustered, said she had no money to pay. At this point, his true nature as a pervert emerged. He demanded compensation by having some fun with him. Looking closely, while the girl wasn't extraordinarily beautiful, her red dress made her stand out, and since he had been alone for so long, she appeared to him like a rare beauty. However, the girl refused, saying it was inappropriate to do such things in broad daylight. She promised to visit him at night instead. Thinking it made sense, he agreed. That day, though he continued to work, his heart was restless, eagerly awaiting the evening, partly because he feared she would break her promise, partly because he longed for a romantic night. As soon as he got home, he ate, bathed, and went to bed early, lying there waiting for the girl to arrive. He waited, and when she still didn't show up, he thought he had been fooled. But late at night, the girl in the red dress from earlier truly did push open his door and enter. He pulled her close, expressing how much he missed her, his hands restlessly tugging at her clothes. Her chest was revealed covered in fine fur. Startled, he asked if she was a fox spirit, having so much hair. The girl calmly admitted she was indeed a fox spirit. But since he had lived alone for years, he stubbornly refused to let go, thinking that sleeping with a fox spirit was still better than being lonely. After a passionate night, he shamelessly asked the fox for some spending money. She didn't refuse and nodded, promising to bring money the next day. Keeping her word, the fox spirit really brought him 2 silver ingots. He was overjoyed he had both a beauty and money to spend. With money in hand, he went out and splurged. He picked a fancy restaurant and ordered a table full of delicacies. But when it came time to pay, the owner claimed the silver ingots were fake. He was beaten severely and thrown out, bruised and swollen. Everyone around looked at him with mocking eyes. He felt both pain and anger for being deceived by the fox spirit. That night, when he saw the fox again, he threw the fake silver ingots in front of her and angrily asked why she gave him counterfeit money. The fox spirit smiled and said that his fate was not meant for wealth. If she gave him real silver or gold, it would only bring disaster. She advised him to live a simple, honest life. She went on to say that people should follow their destiny. He was not meant for riches or stunning beauty-ish. He was only suited to live peacefully with a wife who could share life's burdens with him. One day, the fox placed a few taels of scrap silver in front of him, saying that their fate had come to an end. He should use the silver to marry a wife. He was surprised. Being poor and widowed for many years, no one wanted to help him find a match, and no woman ever took notice of him. However, the fox confidently assured him that within 3 days, someone would come to propose marriage. She added that their recent intimacy had drained his vital energy, so she gave him some powdered medicine to help him recover. After saying this, she bid farewell, transformed into a golden mist, and vanished, leaving the farmer filled with regret. 3 days later, sure enough, a matchmaker came to his door, offering to arrange a marriage for him. He was overjoyed. The fox spirit's words had all come true. He eagerly asked how much the bride's family wanted for the dowry. The matchmaker said the bride's family had modest expectations. 3 to 4 taels of silver would suffice. Hearing this, he felt uneasy. He wondered if the girl might be blind or crippled and unwanted by others. He asked the matchmaker to take him to the bride's house to see for himself. Once there, he didn't go in but peeked through the doorway. He saw a slender girl bending forward as someone scratched her back. Her long skirt trailed the floor. Though she wasn't stunning, her face was pleasant enough. Seeing her appearance, he felt she was more than suitable for him and agreed to the match. The bride's family only asked for 3 taels of scrap silver for the wedding gifts, the exact amount given by the fox spirit, so the wedding was arranged. On the wedding day, the bride appeared very courteous, constantly bowing politely to the guests. The ceremony went smoothly. After bowing to heaven and earth, to the ancestors, and to each other as husband and wife, they entered the bridal chamber. But when the bride's red veil was lifted, he was stunned. Her neck was long and stuck straight forward. Her chest was flat and her back was hunched. Her feet were enormous, even bigger than his. At that moment, he finally understood. Perhaps the fox spirit had been right all along. This was his destiny, and he had no choice but to accept it. From then on, the couple lived in harmony and even had several children. Though he no longer had a beautiful woman by his side, his life was peaceful and content. This strange story took place a long time ago, during a time when cricket fighting suddenly became all the rage in the imperial city. From the emperor to the court officials, everyone was captivated by the fierce competitions between the small but fearless crickets. People eagerly showed off their crickets, sparing no gold or silver in the search for those with outstanding appearances. When some were willing to spend large sums to buy them, naturally others rushed out to catch them. People across the country hunted for crickets day and night before their homes, behind their gardens, in fields and along riverbanks everywhere. People searched for crickets. Anyone lucky enough to find a cricket with an exceptional appearance was as if they'd struck gold. Just taking it to the market would draw immediate buyers. That cricket would be sold for an outrageous price, enough to feed and clothe a whole family for many days. Sometimes, it could even change one's fate. The local authorities even issued orders to every household, requiring each to submit a cricket by a certain deadline. Those who failed would be punished. When it came time for the village chief to submit a cricket, he sighed. Crickets in the area had been nearly wiped out. This like driving people to desperation. Though he was a village chief and technically a local official, he was still pressured by the district office to meet the deadline. He pleaded with the higher officials, saying crickets were truly hard to find. But he was scolded instead. If you can't submit it, how will I explain this to my superiors? That time, the village chief was beaten with 20 strokes. His backside was bruised and bloody. He curled up, not daring to let out a sound. But beyond the physical pain, what worried the village chief more was where to find a cricket with good features. He sighed. If he couldn't find a worthy cricket, he dared not imagine the consequences. Seeing how distressed her husband was, the chief's wife suggested seeking help from a fortune teller. She whispered that a spirit medium had recently arrived in the city, said to be highly accurate. Perhaps they could ask her where to find a precious cricket. In their desperation, they had no choice but to try. The village chief's wife queued outside the fortune teller's home for half a day before it was her turn. Once inside, the fortune teller said nothing. The wife offered a ceremonial fee and stood humbly, waiting for guidance. The fortune teller took out paper and brush, drew a few squiggly lines, then handed the paper over without uttering a word. Her hand trembled slightly, as though the image had long been imprinted in her mind. The chief's wife took it, believing it to be some magical secret. But one glance left her stunned. She couldn't make heads or tails of it. On the paper was a simple sketch: a mountain, a tall building, and a toad sitting beside a rock. No words, no explanations, leaving the viewer even more confused. When she brought it home and handed it to her husband, he studied it for a while before suddenly becoming enlightened, as if a spark had gone off in his mind. Observing the landscape in the drawing, the village chief immediately recognized it as resembling the great Buddha temple outside the city. He exclaimed, "Isn't this the temple on the east side of the city?" Without hesitation, he headed straight for the eastern area, searching for a place that matched the drawing. His heart was full of hope, yet he feared he'd find nothing. Carefully rummaging through the jagged rocks around the temple, his eyes scanned for signs of crickets. Suddenly, a round toad leapt out from a crevice in the rocks, just like the one in the drawing. Startled, the chief quickly followed its hopping trail, a glimmer of hope rising in his chest. Beneath a rock, a small cricket lay hidden. His heart pounded as he whispered in his mind, "My God, it's real." Though the cricket wasn't large and didn't appear particularly impressive, in this desperate situation, anything was better than nothing. He carefully wrapped it up and brought it home. The village chief brought the cricket to the district official. Upon seeing it, the official sneered and mocked. "After all that searching, this tiny thing is all you found?" The official brought out his prized green-head cricket. "Let's see how they do in a fight." But to everyone's shock, the tiny cricket brought by the village chief quickly bit off one of the greenhead's legs within just a few rounds. The official cried out in alarm, almost begging, "Oh no, it's over! Stop biting!" The crowd around cheered. "It's incredibly strong!" News of the village chief's powerful cricket spread rapidly. People came from all over to challenge it, but none could win. The chief felt like he'd discovered a treasure and considered offering it to the royal court in hopes of receiving a minor title. He placed the cricket in a box and stored it carefully at home. But unexpectedly, his curious son secretly opened the lid to see what was so special about this cricket. As soon as the lid cracked open, the cricket sprang out like lightning, its silhouette flashing past the lantern light, startling the boy who rushed after it. The boy frantically dashed outside. Afraid the cricket would escape, he bent down and used his hand to cover it. In that moment, he had no idea what disaster he was about to cause. His hand came down harder than he meant, and tragedy struck. The precious cricket died right there under his young palm. When he heard the news, the village chief erupted in rage. He gave the boy a harsh beating, shouting through tears, "Why would you do this? What am I supposed to submit now?" The worst part was that the royal court had already heard he possessed a high-quality cricket. If he failed to deliver, the consequences could be dire. Clutching his head in despair, he moaned, "Who knows how they'll punish me? It all feels hopeless." The chief and his wife were grief-stricken for days. Their son went missing. After searching for some time, they discovered that, fearing punishment, the boy had jumped into the well. When they pulled him up, he still had a faint breath. But no matter what they did, they couldn't wake him. The village chief sat blankly on the doorstep, covering his face in tears. His heart was filled with regret and sorrow for his unconscious son. In his grief, he suddenly heard a cricket's chirp. The sound, both familiar and strange, caught his attention. He followed the sound to a damp corner behind the house. There, a small cricket sat on the wall. Though small, this cricket was brave and fought just as well as the previous one. The chief offered it to the emperor and was rewarded handsomely. Even so, he couldn't feel happy. His son still hadn't woken, lying motionless for days. Half a year later, a miracle occurred. His son suddenly regained consciousness. Strangely, The moment he opened his eyes, he whispered unbelievable things. He said he had turned into a cricket, had been to the imperial palace, was loved by the emperor, and had defeated all challengers in battles. He remembered every person and event clearly. The village chief and his wife listened, stunned and skeptical. Wasn't this the exact story of the cricket they had captured? It turned out the boy had become the cricket, helped his family through hardship and brought them fortune. Thankfully, he had returned, and now the whole family could live happily together. This horror story is about a mandarin who raised over 100 buffaloes and cows. His greatest joy each day was sitting under a tree, watching his herd graze. That year, during a scorching summer, the mandarin was, as usual, sitting beneath the tree when a young man hurriedly approached from the distance. The young man sat down under the tree to cool off. He wore a headscarf, and sweat drenched his face from the oppressive heat. Because it was so hot, he plucked a large leaf from the tree to fan himself, though it didn't help much. The mandarin advised him to remove the headscarf, saying it would feel much cooler, but the young man firmly refused. While fanning himself, the young man sighed, "If only I had a bowl of cold wine right now, it would really help beat the heat." Finding the young man interesting, the mandarin invited him to his home, saying that if he didn't mind, he had cold wine to offer. He then ordered his servants to bring up a fine jar of wine that had been chilled in the well. The mandarin and the young man then drank together. The cool wine was refreshing, and their conversation became as warm and friendly as if they were long-time companions. After a few bowls, the young man began to feel tipsy and subconsciously removed his headscarf. The mandarin was startled the moment he saw what was underneath. There was a reason why the young man had refused to take off the scarf. At the back of the young man's head, a faint light was glowing, as if a halo was emanating from it. Curious, the mandarin wanted to take a closer look, which made the young man extremely anxious. He warned that what was behind his head was very important and absolutely not to be examined. After a few more bowls of wine, the young man could no longer resist the alcohol and slumped over the table fast asleep. Seeing the young man motionless, the mandarin couldn't resist his curiosity and stepped behind him. He saw a large hollow at the back of the young man's head, covered with a thin layer of flesh. Something inside it was moving. Though a bit frightened, his curiosity got the better of him, and the mandarin carefully lifted the fleshy membrane. A small creature, resembling a calf but with wings, suddenly flew out. The mandarin tried to catch it, but it was too late. It shot out the window and vanished. The young man instantly awoke. Panicked, as if something catastrophic had just occurred, he cried out, "It's over! It's all over! This is a disaster!" He explained that if the creature escaped, it would likely cause all the cattle in the area to die from a plague. The mandarin, shocked, stammered, asking what could be done. It turned out the young man was the plague deity of livestock, and what the mandarin had released was the cattle plague, ox plague, a disease that kills every cow and buffalo it touches. Most people in the region depended on raising cattle to survive. If this disease spread, how would they live? The mandarin was terrified. The plague deity sighed and said, "This is also my fault for drinking too much. I will write a remedy, follow the prescription, and it will cure the ox plague. You may share it with the others." He then gave the mandarin a recipe to treat the disease and took his leave. Sure enough, 3 days later, cattle within a 10-mile radius began falling ill with the ox plague. The mandarin, now anxious, instructed his cousin to go gather the ingredients for the medicine. However, he gave special instructions that he already had the prescription and told his cousin to strictly follow it, stressing not to share it with outsiders. The mandarin intended to cure only his and his cousin's cattle, keeping the remedy secret from the local people. The cousin prepared the medicine exactly as instructed, and it truly cured the ox plague. But the cousin couldn't bear to see other farmers go bankrupt, so he shared the remedy widely, helping cure all the affected cattle. Strangely, though the mandarin also used the same medicine, it failed to cure his own cattle. Over 100 of the mandarin's cattle died from the ox plague, leaving him devastated and helpless. Fortunately, a few female cows survived. It wasn't until 3 years later that the herd gradually grew again to over 100 head, and only then did the mandarin regain his wealth.